welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we'll be talking about how to draw mammal eyes. As always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. So then the last thing to do are the eyes. A lot of animals, their eyes are brown. Sometimes what I do, especially on animals whose eyes are kind of on the side of their heads, is I just do the light flare. But we're gonna have her looking at us. We'll use select tool to kind of fix it. I don't think I got this one quite right. In fact, I think I'm actually just going to erase it. Now, in reality, they, really wouldn't be looking like this, but alright, and then we fill in kind of around it following this line, right? So as I come this way, this is going to go down. And on this side, it could go up a little bit before it goes down, but it inevitably still needs to go down. And then we just sort of fill in that circle. Same thing with this side. Right, this comes down. And then on this side, it could go up just a little bit, but inevitably needs to curve downward. And then just fill in the circle. And this is absolutely a case. You'll see me back out a lot for the eyes. Because while up close something may look like it's looking at you, if you back out and it's not, then it's not. So it's an example of one of the reasons why I back out so much, right? Is up close something can look great, and then you back away and you've missed something or it doesn't quite work. And so that'll tell me what I need to know, right? So I can back out and see she looks like she's looking at us. Now I talked about using the select tool, so I'm using specifically the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to come in here and make a little oval if it's not already, and that just kind of cleans up that edge. And then I do the same thing on this side. Cleans up the edge a little bit. Since the pupils are also important, not just the edge of the eye that needs to be straight, but the pupils, and I'm just going to fix this line. Because of how I draw, sometimes when I do that, it leaves some gaps. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Some of this will be resolved with shadows and highlights, but okay. Now, with the light source coming from above and to the right, we're going to add a burst of light. Actually, I'm going to fix this edge first. Just a little bit. Bring that a little further over. Okay. We're going to add a burst of light on the edge of the pupil on the opposite side of the light source, because our pupils are like a recess in our eye. So as the pupil's coming back out of that recess, the light's catching it, whereas on the side of the light source it's going into shadow because it's dipping down into it. So this is how you can kind of create, you know, the illusion of something, of like a hole in any way, not just for a pupil. If you're drawing like a cup, you can do something similar. On the opposite side, you would have a burst of light on the rim of the cup, and then on the side of the light source, you have it going into shadow. It's that same kind of idea. Right, so we have this burst of light, and then on the side of the light source, we're going to have that full pin pressure, just like we did full pin pressure under here. That goes all the way under, leaving that gap that goes all the way under and attaches to this burst of light, going all the way under the eye, edge going into shadow, and then this side, this back side kind of going into shadow. Right, so that full pin pressure all the way down. Start tapering it off there, and then over and connecting them together. And then fading it out. Right, so backing off my pin pressure. And adding a lot of lines, create the illusion of that shadow. And then as we get closer into here, same thing, backing off that pin pressure, popping right back out. And then up in here, same thing, backing off the pin pressure. Because it's going into a shadowed space, right? That's what this black is it's the shadow of the eyelid casting over our eye. And making sure it's all sort of a gentle transition, and then shadow on this side. But, you know, making sure the light flare doesn't look out of place. Not the light flare, the burst of light against the pupil, making sure that doesn't look out of place. Light flare is something different. Important, though, one of the most important parts. And then just, you know, fading it into place. That's kind of what you get. And then same thing on this side, burst against the pupil. And then on the side of the light source, going all the way underneath and connecting to that little burst there, and all the way under. Making sure it's faded. That it just sort of fades into place. And then the back side, of course. And then just fading it in. All right, and one of the most important things we can do for the eyes is the light flare. So to do that, I'm just going to change my foreground color to that off-white. I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to make, a little circular ovular shape, typically on the eye that's the most in shadow first, and making sure it's in a highlighted portion of the eye, right? So I don't want it up here in the black. And then I'm just going to come down here to edit. Oops, not stroke. Edit and fill, foreground color, and hit OK. I'm going to drag the selection, so I just have to drag it. As long as I'm still on the selection, it'll take the selection and not what I just filled. Try to line it up from the bottom the same way that this one is. And then do the same thing. Fill, foreground color. Right, when we back out, we have that nice light flare, but we're not done. On this side, we're going to add, by taking the lasso tool, we're going to create the effect of fur. First, I'm going to copy the layer in case I mess this up. But to do that, right, we're going to come down, lining up. So what I'm doing is I'm following the edge of this eye, right? Come down, and then we have that fur happening. So just creating these jagged lines coming up here and erasing out. And that gives that illusion that there's fur blocking. Right, you can kind of see that in here. And then I'm debating for both of them. We have the eyelashes coming down, so you could even have some long eyelashes blocking some of this. Erase that out. Yeah, I think that probably works. Although maybe not as much on this side because they're not right there. But you get kind of that effect. All right. I'm just debating on what to do for the eyes. They're pretty dark, like a lot of smaller animals. Just feel like I could draw something in, but for now, let's see what this looks like. So I'm gonna just take the select tool and create the light flare on the eye without drawing it in. Scratch that. I'm gonna try and do a brown eye. Most animals have brown eyes. Groundhogs are described as having black eyes, depending on who you read. So their eyes are probably pretty dark. I'm gonna come with this brown and just same thing on this side. And then just fill it in. So right, lightly filling it in. I don't fill in all the way around. I leave the top dark because that'll be, where the shadow's kicking in. Typically. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I fill it in, especially if there's too much space left. Fill it all the way around. Same thing on this side. Then I always take this elliptical marquee tool and I just make sure I've done their eyes justice. the same thing on this side. Yeah. Okay. Light source coming from above and to the right. So, first thing I'm going to do is add a burst of light against the pupil opposite of the light source. Pupils are recess in our eyes, right? So as that void is coming back out, it's going to catch the light, whereas on the side of the light source, it's going to go into a shadow on that edge. And then, of course, the actual highlight for the eye on the side of the light source going all the way underneath, but the edge will be in shadow. So we all have that little dark section around our eyes, and the eye itself will be going into the recess of the head. Right, so all under here, highlight. Going into shadow on this side. Make sure that highlight's nice and bright. It's really catching the light here. And then just make sure that it also is faded out nicely. And then I fade it out on this side, this upper edge, before it gets to the edge itself. All right, there's one side. Same thing on this one, right? Burst of light against the pupil, going underneath, and then highlight on the side of the light source, and then underneath the eye. All right. So then the last thing for the eyes is the light flare. It's one of the most important parts. I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool again, make a little circle in the highlighted section of the eye, so I don't want it up in the shadow. And then on the side of the light source, and then I'm just going to fill it with the foreground color, which I already changed to the white, and then drag it over and do the same thing on this side. I usually start with the eye that's in more shadow because typically there's less room to work with, especially on eyes that are small. Back out, see if that looks good. It does. I'm just going to give them both a little nudge higher. Yeah. So light source coming from above and to the right. Doesn't really matter yet, I guess, because right now we sketch it in. So I just sketch in the pupil first. Make sure it looks like she's looking at me. And then the same thing on the other side. Try to make them the same size, but if not, it's not the end of the world because I am going to take the select tool and fix the edges. Yep. And then fill it in, usually leaving a gap. Fill it in so that it's in a circle, right? This sort of semicircle coming down. It's in this line, not in this line. So, you know, if the eye is casting a shadow, this is the line to follow where that shadow's happening. Same is true on this side. Bring that down. over here. And then just lightly fill it in. I'm just lightly filling it in at the moment. Nothing heavy or major. We'll add the highlights and shadows in a second. Yeah, that's actually shows up around the black nicely. Okay, so now I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool and I'm going to just create a circle here to make sure that this is a perfectly circular recess. Same thing on this side. And that she's still looking at us. And I'll fix any wayward edges that left. Okay. Now we fill it in. Again, light source coming from above and into the right. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a burst of light against the pupil on the opposite side of the light source. Because there's going to be a shadow against the side of the light source, right? Pupil is a recess into our eyes. And that's how you create the illusion of something going into sort of a deeper void, right? Like you have a shadow on the side, and then the light source would basically be hitting the edge of the opposite side. And then we're going to fully put pin pressure right next to on the side of the light source, connecting to that light flare underneath, or to the, I'm sorry, not the light flare, the burst of light going all the way underneath the eye, and then we'll fade it off. Now the edge, it's also in shadow. And so now I just fade it off up here at this edge, and then fade it off down to this edge. It's a little bright. And fade it as we come over here. This is on the opposite side of the light source, so would also have a little bit of a shadow. Alright, and now the other one. Same thing, burst of light against the pupil. highlight on the side and going all the way underneath. And then, you know, fading out as it gets to the edge. And then a shadow as it comes to this side as well, to this back side. Doesn't have to be a deep shadow, but just enough that there's a difference, right? Like I'm just holding back that little bit of pin pressure. A little bit of shadowing as it enters. Shadow on this side, a little bit of shadowing against the pupil on this side. All right. Yeah. Now, one of the most important things to do when you're drawing eyes, in my opinion, is to draw the light flare. Light flare is just a burst of highlight where the light source would be bouncing on the eyes. Our eyes are wet, so they pick up that light really nicely. Once again, I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to make an oval. Size depends on how much space we're working with. Not working with a lot, so this one's going to be small. And we put it in that highlighted section, but I don't want it going below the pupil, right? So maybe a little smaller than that. Come in a little bit more. And make that. There we go. And then I'm just going to fill it with the foreground color. I've already changed the white. And then do the same thing on this side, trying to mimic how high it was. Always making sure it's on that highlighted side and going partly into the pupil, partly onto the iris. And then filling that. Gives kind of that burst of liveliness. Alright, so that is how you draw mammal eyes. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me, I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.